On behalf of the Sustainability Reporting Standard Board of ICI, I, Puneet Mittal, extend a warm welcome to all of you to the 9th session of our webinar series, Demystifying Sustainability, Catalyzing Growth.
Who has started this session?
Ma'am, team will start the session. Ma'am, session is online.
Already started or what?
Yes, just started. No, already started. Good afternoon, ma'am.
तो आप मैं ज्वाइन कर रही हूँ, आप वेट भी नहीं कर रहे हो, मेरा ऐसे ही स्टार्ट कर देते हो. हाँ? Who has authorized?
Ma'am, sorry, ma'am, we are not aware. Ma'am, Bharti ma'am, let's give a few lines about our chairperson, CA Preeti ma'am.
Yes. Hello, everyone. CA Preeti Savla, distinguished career includes her role as chairperson of the Women and Young Members Excellence Committee and Sustainability Reporting Standards Board. Apart from being on the board of Discipline, Vice Chairman in Corporate Laws and Governance Committee. Internationally, she is the sole Indian representative on the Sustainability Standards Advisory Forum of the ISSB, IFRS Foundation, and has chaired the SAPA Sustainability Board. She is a public interest director in NSC Clearing Limited as an independent director.
Hello, you need not. Hello, madam, Bharti madam, please don't give my introduction. It is not required. Okay?
Yes.
And yeah, so the team at least and next time onwards keep in mind. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is Shweta? Where is Shweta?
Ma'am is not well, so ma'am is our office mein.
After 15 minutes, you call me. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
So, hello friends, hello everyone, welcome all of you to this session on biodiversity. And we have with us CMO Bajaj, who will take us through the session. And we have with us CA Bharti Parekh and CA Kinjal Mirani, who are moderating the session. And I, on behalf of ICI and Sustainability Reporting Standard Board, welcome all of you to this session on biodiversity. Friends, today is a very special day, that is Biodiversity Day. And that's why we have specifically kept this session on biodiversity today. The day by day, the importance, everyone, awareness, rather, importance is always there. But awareness about the sustainability and biodiversity is increasing day by day. And and as an institute, we are also taking very proactive steps and not only organizing the webinars, but we are also have scheduled Biodiversity Day celebration on Saturday, 24th of May at Delhi, where we have invited various regulators from India, C&AG and SEBI, and all are coming and participating, taking the sessions in this Biodiversity Day. Apart from that, we are also coming out with a new standard, assurance standard, which is 5,000, making in line with the assurance standards across the world. And we are also coming out with mapping of this IFRS S1 and S2 and making this BRSR in the same lines of the same. So various other initiatives are also being taken. So for our members and the nation at large. And with these words, taking this sustainability agenda forward as a partner in nation building, I welcome all of you to this session on biodiversity. Our speakers, CA Moni Bajaj, our moderators, CA Bharti Parekh, Kinjal Mirani, and all the participants. I also request all of you to give the suggestions and see that we are there in we are leading in the world. So welcome all of you. And over to Bharti madam.
Hello.
Yes, madam.
So I will like to introduce you, madam.
No introduction is not required as a chairperson. So
okay.
his office also is requested not to put all this introduction in.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Ma'am, now I request Kinjal ma'am to introduce our
Arey
speaker.
madam, arey office, you are not required to speak anything.
Sorry.
Please, these moderators are there to take care of everything. Yes, Kinja. Please, I request
so today-
moderators to take forward now.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. So today's session will be taken by CA Moni Bajaj. CA Moni Bajaj is a chartered accountant and the founder of Sustaining Global Private Limited, a top-tier consultancy specializing in environmental, social, and governance solutions. With a deep-rooted background in finance and sustainability, she leads a team of offering services in ESG reporting, CSR strategies, NGO support, and carbon accounting. CA Moni's work empowers the client to balance profitability with impactful environmental and social practices, aligning business growth with sustainable principles. With this brief introduction, I would request CA Moni Bajaj to start the session.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for the kind introduction. Thank you, Preeti, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity. Now I will be sharing the PPT. So I hope it is visible to everyone.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, so today's topic is biodiversity disclosures in sustainability reporting. And this is the outline of today's webinar. What is biodiversity and why does it matters? Challenges and threats to the biodiversity. What is the regulatory push for biodiversity disclosure? Biodiversity in ESG and sustainability reports, diversity disclosures under different Indian and global ESG frameworks, and then how to disclose this biodiversity in the ESG reports, and what are the benefits of reporting biodiversity. So as our chairperson, CA Preeti Savla madam also said that today is a very special day. It is International Day for Biodiversity. So, and the theme of this day is harmony with nature and sustainable development. So all the countries nowadays are trying to achieve Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity related goals. And what was that? It is basically called as the Paris Agreement for Nature. It was COP15 when countries decided that they want to achieve biodiversity targets to halt and reverse biodiversity loss, and to be to live aligned with nature by 2050. And this particular halt and reverse biodiversity loss is a target to be achieved by 2030. That is why a lot of countries have already made their targets for reversing biodiversity loss 2030 by 2030. Now, what is biodiversity and why it matters? We live in an environment. We live on this earth, not alone. Only human beings are not there. There are very small and micro and macro organisms which are living in this earth and who are somehow impacting each and every function, each and every life, which is living on earth. So there are variety of life across species, ecosystems, which includes life on land, on marine fresh waters, and biodiversity is also clearly defined in GRI 101, ESRS E4, and these are essential to maintain the natural balance. Also, our BRSR talks about little bit about biodiversity. Now, why biodiversity matters to all the living beings? It doesn't matter only to the human beings, but it matters to the all living beings. Biodiversity helps us to enable clean air, water, food, and climate stability. If the small microorganisms doesn't present on earth, then it will be very difficult to keep the life cycle running. Even the very small species like bees are very important to maintain our food supply chain. So that is why biodiversity helps in, and supports in protecting agriculture, health, culture, and livelihood. And the loss to biodiversity affects life quality and global well-being. Now, why does it matters to the businesses? Businesses cannot work on their own. They need resources, they need people, they need different kind of things. They need water, they need energy. And where does that come from? That comes from the earth. And on earth, lot of living beings, lot of small species, working together to provide us all those resources. So that is why keeping biodiversity is also very important, especially in companies which are working in the food sector. So like I said in my previous example, that bees are very important for agriculture, for the pollination and all. So if they are not there, then there will be scarcity of food. And if there is scarcity of food or agricultural resources, then the food sector companies can also not survive. So therefore, the biodiversity is important for the businesses also. And the loss to biodiversity leads to higher cost, supply chain risk, and operational disruptions. Now, why we are talking about biodiversity and protection of biodiversity? Because there are some challenges, there are some threats. It is a global crisis, and some reports suggest that over 1 million species are at risk of extinction. We will not be able to see 1 million species which are currently present on Earth. And biodiversity loss is accelerating, it is increasing across different ecosystems. Now, these are the 5 major threats we call, regarding the biodiversity. One is land use change. Due to increasing urbanization, due to increasing demand of human beings, there is continuous deforestation happening all over the world. We have seen the Amazon rainforest also. And also the hunger for food, the hunger for more agricultural also has changed the land. There used to be forests, now they have cut them all, and there are now either buildings or there are agricultural activities happening. So they impact the biodiversity, they impact the microorganisms living on that particular area. Second is climate change. Climate change is also happening. We have seen a lot of cases where unpredictable rains are happening. Some areas which used to be cold are now warm, and the areas which used to be warm are now cold. So this is all climate change. It also alters the habitats and species behavior. Then pollution, very major cause of biodiversity loss. There is air pollution, water pollution, soil degradation, and also noise pollution. That also somehow impacts the biodiversity. Overexploitation. Overexploitation of lot of natural resources which are scarce, which are limited. That also is contributing to biodiversity loss. Invasive species. So there are some species which disrupt native biodiversity. Now, what are the wider implications of biodiversity loss? Biodiversity is deeply linked to our climate, food, water, and health security. There is high risk to businesses, specifically which are resource intensive sectors, especially in the manufacturing sector, or where they need resources from nature. For example, timber. So if there are no forests, then if the supply is coming from the forest, that will be impacted if there is loss of biodiversity. So which has made regulatory implications, and there is reputational and operational vulnerabilities related to biodiversity loss. So, like there is a already target to achieve biodiversity, to reduce the biodiversity loss by 2030. So there were a lot of regulatory push from different countries. And that's why biodiversity related disclosure were mandated in some countries. Why did they happen? They happen because biodiversity loss is equal to systemic risk to economies and capital market. If we do not get the essential resources, which are actually food or blood for the businesses, then economies of countries will collapse. So they have to protect biodiversity. Investors and policymakers also understood the need, and they understood the risk related to biodiversity or nature. And there is a shift from voluntary to mandatory disclosures globally. And materiality also they have defined. So earlier it used to be only the activities, only the things which are impacting the operations of the entity used to be material. But now it is the opposite also. The operations which are impacting the outer world, that also are material. We call it double materiality. So the double materiality principles were adopted by EU and GRI, and the focus was on both business impact on biodiversity and biodiversity impact on business continuity, something which is impacting business operations and business operations impacting the other things. Now, the key global responses in terms of biodiversity disclosures we see in EU, that is ESRS, European Sustainability Reporting Standard, E4, that is a specific standard for biodiversity reporting. And then GRI also released one specific standard for biodiversity, and it will be effective from 2026, from January 2026. And then IFRS also, they do not have specific standards, but they also talk about disclosing something which is material for the business. And definitely from the previous slides we have understood that biodiversity is also important for the businesses, is also material for the businesses. CDP also has added some kind of disclosures related to biodiversity. And in India, we have our own ESG reporting, that is BRSR. So BRSR also has some questions related to biodiversity. Biodiversity in ESG and sustainability report. Why did they include it in ESG report? Because of investors are very much interested in knowing nature related disclosures. And biodiversity is a material ESG disclosure, and it is mandatory, not optional. And the reporting enhances transparency, accountability, and preparedness for tackling all these problems. So where biodiversity fits in ESG? ESG, we all know, ESG is environment, social, and governance. So there are companies which need to prepare sustainability reports or ESG reports, where they have to tell that they are doing business in a responsible manner in terms of environment, social, and governance. So biodiversity is somehow related to the E aspect of ESG. It is related to the environment aspect. So therefore, it is somehow interlinked with the climate resilience, resource efficiency, and ecosystem services, which are critical for the continuity of business. Environmental pillar. Biodiversity alongside climate, water, and pollution is very important. That is why it has to be disclosed in ESG report. What are the current reporting trends? So in ESG reports, there is a standalone biodiversity section where companies has to disclose about the policies, risk and impacts related to biodiversity. What are the restoration efforts and targets the entity has for biodiversity? And then site level biodiversity mapping. If an entity has a site which is located near to some area which is sensitive in terms of biodiversity, so definitely that is a risk area. So they have to define what are the the activities which impacted that area. So what are the policies to restore that? So all those they have to report. What is the benefit of reporting all these things in ESG reports? It improves the stakeholder trust. They know that what is the risk in business, so they can take informed decision. They can take wise decision with whether they want to deal with that business or not. Stakeholder again is someone who is getting impacted from the operations of the business and vice versa. So they are interested what is happening into the entity, what is happening with the entity. Risk mitigation and regulatory compliance. If ESG or sustainability report is mandatory for any entity, they have to prepare report and they have to disclose it. This is mandatory on them. So to mitigate the risk of regulatory compliance, they have to report. Then it supports the long-term sustainability and business valuation. If an entity is working, suppose in a site which is sensitive to biodiversity, and if something happens and there are regulatory actions against them, that you have to shut down your business because now this particular area cannot bear the impact of your operations. But if company understand that this site is sensitive, what are the problems here, and they solve them on time, they can continue their operations there. So the reporting helps them to analyze all those things. So it supports long-term sustainability and business valuation. If they shut down that particular site, definitely it's going to impact their business valuation also. Then biodiversity disclosures. There is a biodiversity disclosure in our BRSR also. So BRSR again was introduced by SEBI for top 1000 listed entities, and it was mandatory from financial year 22-23. It includes two type of disclosure: essential disclosures and leadership essential indicators and leadership indicators. Essentials are mandatory to be disclosed and leadership are optional, are voluntary. So there is again BRSR is divided into three parts: section A, B, C, and C section has 9 questions, 9 principles, and under those 9 principles there are different questions. So the principle 6 deals with the environmental related disclosures for the entity, and in that particular under that particular principle there are questions related to biodiversity, and that is question number 10, which is there in under the essential indicators, and question number 5 is there under the leadership indicators. So in question number 10 is asked if the entity has operations, offices in around ecological sensitive areas such as national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, wetlands, biodiversity hotspot, forest, coastal regulation zones, etc., where environmental approvals clearance are required, please specify details in the following format. So there they have to tell. So if they have 2-3 locations which are under working in those ecologically sensitive areas, they have to report them. Suppose we can say for example some site is in Goa in some ecological sensitive area, so they have to write that site location and then what type of operations are going on there and whether the conditions of environmental approvals, clearance, etc. have been taken? And if not, what were the reasons for that? And what kind of corrective actions they took? So that they have to disclose. And again, under leadership indicator, question number 5 asks, with respect to the ecologically sensitive areas reported at question 10 of essential indicators above, provide details of significant direct and indirect impact of the entity on biodiversity in such areas along with prevention and remediation activities. So basically it is asking that if you are at those sensitive areas, ecologically sensitive areas, what kind of impact was there? And what did you do to prevent that impact? What kind of remedy and activities were there? Then that was about BRSR. A lot of companies, in fact, in a lot of countries countries have adopted GRI standards for ESG disclosures. So GRI also has a specific standard for biodiversity related disclosures. It is called GRI 101. It was released in 2024 and it will be effective from 1st January 2026. Means company has to prepare their reports from 26 onward, or publish reports on 26 onward. What is the overview? That it is a dedicated topic standard on biodiversity. It covers impacts, dependencies, mitigations, and restorations. It applies to any organization identifying biodiversity as a material topic. In GRI, materiality is very important. GRI, unlike BRSR, they do not say that you have to report on this thing. They say that if something is material to you, you should report it. So that's why if biodiversity and things related to biodiversity are material, are important, are relevant for an entity, they have to disclose. And then standards gives them guidelines, standard gives them support how to report them. So it is further divided into 8 parts and it asks for different kind of disclosures. So the first one asks for policies to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. So first one talks about the policies. What kind of policies entity has to reverse the biodiversity loss? If an entity is operating in an area which is covered under biodiversity sensitive area or something like that, then only this particular standard will be applicable on them. So definitely if they are working in that area, they will be having some sort of policies, so they have to disclose about them. And then second part is management of biodiversity impact. How does the entity manage the biodiversity related impacts? They have to disclose about that. Then third part is access and benefits sharing practices and commitments. So an entity where it is working and that is biodiversity sensitive, there are chances of biodiversity loss. There must be local community living there. So what kind of efforts they are doing, what kind of practices they are doing with those people, and what kind of resources they are sharing and what kind of commitments they have. So all that will come under that part. Then 4 talks about identification of organizations' biodiversity impact. Now it talks about what kind of biodiversity impact your organization's operations had. So we have to disclose them. Then locations of operations with significant biodiversity impact. Just like in BRSR, here also they have to tell these are the different locations where they are working and those are significant in terms of biodiversity impact. Then 6th is direct drivers of biodiversity loss linked to organizations' activities. What kind of organizations' activities which are impacting biodiversity loss, which are creating biodiversity loss, they have to disclose about them. Then changes to the state of biodiversity due to the organization's operations. Suppose there was an area that was ecologically sensitive and some company came they put their plant there, they started working there. So they have to tell now what kind of change happened when this organization started working there. So there may be pollution, there may be decrease in life of different species. So and maybe decrease in some sort of species of plants. So that they can disclose. And then it is impact on ecosystem services. Ecosystem services can be impact on the water, impact on air, all those things. Then templates and guidelines. So under this particular standard, it says you have to include things site level, at the site level, what is happening at the site. And accordingly, so there in that standard, at the end, you will find appendix where you will see different tables. So those are the formats which can be used for reporting biodiversity. And it also tells about the criteria, how to identify ecologically sensitive areas. And again, this standard is also in well alignment with Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Their target is to achieve reversal of biodiversity by 2030. Now, this is ESRS, European Sustainability Reporting Standard, E4. So it was issued under EU's CSRD framework. And this is also a very specific standard which talks about disclosures related to biodiversity. And it requires companies to disclose impact, dependencies, and transition plan. Dependencies in terms of risk and financial effects. If the biodiversity had some negative impact due to the operations, then definitely it will be somehow impacting the operations of the entity negatively. So that dependency companies need to disclose. And then transition plan. In line with this, so their country has a specific plan that they want to get, they want to be neutral, or they want to achieve that target of biodiversity by 2030. Then company must also have some sort of plan so that they can help the entire country in achieving that particular target. They must also have their individual target, individual plans. So what kind of those transition plans they can report about them also. Then special focus area. Again, they are also focusing on the site specific disclosures. You have to talk about the sites which are working in those eco-sensitive areas, near protected or sensitive areas. It is mandatory for high impact sectors. So it also talks about materiality. If there is some high impact sectors, then they have to mandatorily disclose about biodiversity. For example, agriculture, mining, construction. Agriculture is highly dependent on biodiversity. And if there is a loss of biodiversity, then agriculture will also get impacted. There will be lesser agricultural produce. Similarly, in mining, if government bans that you cannot mine some particular resource, it will also impact. And there are very stringent regulations for the mining sector. If they do not maintain, they create a lot of loss to the biodiversity, and there are regulatory actions against them. So that can impact, therefore they have to report about them also. In construction also, a lot of resources that comes from different areas, and that can also in constructions, a very important thing in cities, they have to take environmental clearance also. In environmental clearance also, somehow they have to present that what kind of impact they're going to have, what kind of trees they're going to cut, and how they're going to compensate that. So construction industry is also highly affected from the biodiversity loss. Now the key disclosure requirements. In this, what they have to disclose is, first of all, their transition plan. That should be in compatibility with the planetary boundaries, that is EU's 2030 goals. Policies, they have to disclose about the biodiversity related governance and commitments and their policies, procedures, they are well in place or not. Then actions and resources, if something negative is happening, what kind of actions they are taking, how they are trying to correct that situation, what are the mitigations measures they are taking, and how they are trying to restore the balance, and what is the budget they have allocated for doing all these things. Then targets, entities have to disclose quantitative targets and their monitoring. Like they say that we will be reducing 30% the biodiversity loss. Then how they monitoring them? Are they really achieving them or not? Then impact metrics, land use, ecosystem conditions, affected species. They have to do the impact assessment basically. And what was the result of that impact assessment? They have to disclose under this standard. And then the financial impact. Definitely, we have understood that something which can impact the operations of the organization can impact the financial health, the financial position of the entity. So, therefore, what are the biodiversity related financial effects in the entity? They have to disclose them. For that, they can do risk and opportunity assessment. There may be something which they can say, for example, an entity is working into food production sector, and they are working in a area which is impacting the operations of the entity in a positive manner. The biodiversity is such a way that they are able to grow more food, they are able to grow more produce, so it can affect in a positive manner also. That's why we call it opportunity. And if it is impacted in a negative manner, we call it risk. And for that, we can do scenario analysis, like if this happens, what will be the result? If that happens, what will be the result? So like that, it is very difficult to analyze the exact financial effect if we talk about some quantitative effect, because there are no particular if something happens, this much will be the loss. That is very difficult to answer. But if we need to disclose only in positive negative terms, we can say, yeah, this can impact the financial position in a positive manner or an impact or a negative manner. That similar disclosure is there in BRSR under section A, 26th question, which talks about the risk and opportunities which can affect the financial position of the entity. And there they are talking about that you have to disclose the effect in just positive and negative terms. You don't have to put any number there, specifically the numbers which are forecasted numbers. But if it is some past data, like for example, due to this biodiversity or due to this particular environmental risk, a company had a 50 crore rupees loss, so they can write that. But they cannot say that after 2 years they are expecting there will be 50 crore loss. That SEBI has restricted companies to do. But in ESRS, they say that you can put numbers. Then biodiversity disclosure under IFRS, ISSB. Again, in IFRS, there is no particular standard for dealing with biodiversity. They only have two standards right now, IFRS S1 and S2. S1 is a general standard which talks about disclosures related to sustainability, and S2 talks about climate related disclosures. So if something which is impacting the operations of an entity and those are material, they have to disclose. That is what S1 and S2 says. If it is general, then they can disclose it under S1. And if it is climate related specifically, they can disclose that under S2. So if biodiversity is material for an entity and it can impact the financial position of the entity, then they have to disclose it. If there is a biodiversity loss and that is linked with climate change, then under IFRS S2, they have to disclose that biodiversity risk. And again, this IFRS is also in well alignment with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Now, CDP also has some biodiversity related disclosures. They do not have any particular standard for that, but they says that companies are expected to disclose sites which are near to biodiversity sensitive areas, and if there are material risk and dependencies on biodiversity, and then they have to disclose also about the mitigation and restoration actions that entity has taken under CDP disclosures. Now, how to disclose biodiversity in sustainability report? We have seen a lot of different kind of standards, different kind of frameworks. Now, let's summarize it, that how to disclose biodiversity in sustainability report. So under GRI and IFRS, and in fact CDP also, we have seen that materiality is very important. So how to disclose this biodiversity? In BRSR, it is very simple. If you have to answer this question. If you're working under you're working in some eco-sensitive area, then you have to disclose. If you are not working, you can simply say it is not, we are not working under that area. But in other standards, materiality is important. Something which is relevant, something which is material for the entity's operations, they have to disclose. So first of all, they have to do materiality assessment. They need to identify biodiversity related impacts, dependencies, what kind of dependencies there between the biodiversity and the operations of the organization. If it is severe, if it is a lot, then definitely that will be material for the entity. And the related risk also. For doing that materiality assessment, they can take help of internal and external stakeholders. Internally, they can take help of their own people, their employees, their investors and all. But board of directors, they can decide. And external stakeholders, they can take help of the community which is residing near the biodiversity sensitive area. So with them, they can decide some sort of policies, some type of strategies to tackle that biodiversity loss related activities. They can make policies and procedures in place. And those policies then we can disclose in sustainability reports. Then policy and governance disclosures. There are commitments that should be well aligned with global frameworks, GRI, ESRS, etc. And BRSR definitely has a specific question regarding it. So if there are policies and governance disclosures, accordingly we have to report or we have to disclose about biodiversity in our sustainability report. Then action and impact reporting. So we can take assessment of the outcomes. You can take assessment of outcome actions, conservation, restoration, and offsets. Use mitigation hierarchies to avoid, minimize, restore, or offset. And BRSR also talks if that question number 5, that what kind of initiatives company had taken to restore the degraded system, restore that biodiversity loss. So that can also be reported in sustainability reports. Then metrics and targets. Company can do different kind of, companies can have targets by assessing, by analyzing the area they are operating. And then they can make their you know, they can build different kind of metrics, different kind of drivers which can help them to assess the sustainability, assess the biodiversity loss or biodiversity impact. And then they can align that biodiversity targets with GRI and ESRS. In BRSR, there are particularly it is written that you have to tell this data, that there you can tell. But if it is under other frameworks, then you have to do your own assessment. You have to do on your own metrics. And if those are material, then they can you can disclose them in your sustainability report. And then there can be site specific data also, which can be reported in the sustainability reports. So activities near protective sensitive areas. And then BRSR significant direct indirect impact on biodiversity. It has a particular question there you can report on biodiversity. Financial implications in BRSR, again that question 26. If biodiversity is material, if biodiversity has some sort of positive or negative impact on the financial position of the entity, there they can talk about biodiversity related disclosure also. But under these IFRS S1 and E4, they talk about the numbers. They talk about the financial impact in terms of value. And for doing financial impact assessment for future things, they can use scenario analysis. So in short, to disclose biodiversity related things in sustainability report, if it is a BRSR report, they have particular question which they can disclose. If it is applicable, they have to tell something. If it is not applicable, they can simply say not applicable. But under other frameworks, they have to do the materiality assessment. If it is something very relevant, very important, they can disclose about it. They can disclose about their policies, they can disclose about their actions, they can disclose about their targets, they can disclose about specific site related data, and then the financial implications. These are the 6 things which can be disclosed in biodiversity related disclosures in sustainability report. Then benefits of biodiversity reporting. We have understood that biodiversity can highly impact the operations of the entity. Therefore, if it is mandatory on them or even voluntarily they are preparing biodiversity report, so they have to measure some sort of things. They have to do their risk analysis and all. And the result will be risk management. They will see if this is something which can be risky for my business, they will not do that, or they will take corrective or actions in advance to mitigate that risk. So biodiversity reporting can help in risk management. Second is investor confidence. If an entity is working in an area which is biodiversity sensitive, then the investor, before putting their money into that business, will think 100 times. So if the biodiversity report is there and everything is okay, then investor will have some sort of confidence and they can give their money to the entity. Regulatory compliance. If it is mandatory to report on sustainability or on biodiversity or on environmental factors, then to comply that, we have to report. So it ensures regulatory compliance also. Operational resilience. We know that biodiversity can impact the operations of the organization. So they will manage things in a better manner, and that can ensure operational resilience. Stakeholder trust. Biodiversity reporting can help us in building trust with other stakeholders also, like the community, our own employees. Employees are also nowadays very sensitive about the operations, or about the about the business operations and continuity of business. Nowadays, employees think before joining an entity, what if tomorrow that entity shut down? So they have to analyze their risk. If an entity is preparing biodiversity report, and suppose if some engineer is joining that entity, so if they go through the biodiversity report and they see that company is already taking actions and there is a solid plan that company will continue taking up their operations, so they will have confidence and they can join the company. Similarly, the community which is residing around that biodiversity sensitive area, they will not restrict the operations of the entity. If the entity is taking care of the biodiversity, they are taking care of the water, they are taking care of the air pollution and everything. And government is also a stakeholder. So the pollution control board or the environmental department, if the entity is taking care of the biodiversity well, they are reporting about things, then they can get their trust also. And then sustainable growth. To continue life on earth, to continue life of business, biodiversity is important. And if company is taking measures, if they are reporting, if they are taking corrective actions, then that can help an organization to have a sustainable and long-term growth. Preparing a report, sustainability report, specifically in disclosures related to biodiversity is not very easy. It is very challenging. Why it is challenging? First of all, because the company are not able to get the data. And second thing, even if they have the data, there is no guarantee that the data is accurate. And every site is different. Every biodiversity related area is different. They will have different sort of organisms. They will have different type of impacts due to the operations of the entity. Some might, there are areas where suppose water is very sensitive resource. Water is very scarce, limited resource, and there is life on that water which is getting impacted from the operations of the entity. Suppose they are releasing some sort of used water, and due to that the life on that water is getting impacted. So how to analyze that? It's very difficult. And even if they analyze, nobody will be able to verify if the data is accurate. And there are lack of expertise also. The company's operations are majorly for getting company profits. And to have experts in this particular domain, it will be an extra burden of cost on the organizations. So therefore they also restrict hiring experts. And then there is difficulty in measuring biodiversity impact. Like I said in my previous example, it is very difficult to measure what is the impact. An organization is working, they are, by day and night, their continuous emission of smoke out of that factory. And due to that, how it is impacting the surrounding area, that impact measurement is very difficult. The lack of standardized metrics and methodologies. In fact, those standards also say that if something is material to you, then you have to report about it. But again, how to calculate that materiality? They says that you have to disclose the financial implication. But again, how to calculate that financial implication? They said scenario analysis. But again, how to give different points to different activities. So there are no standards metrics or methodologies that also makes biodiversity reporting difficult. Then sector and location specific complexity. Every site is different. So their metrics, their there will be different kind of methodologies to access to analyze the biodiversity impact, which is very complex. Then low internal awareness and prioritization. Companies only care for their profit margins. They do not prioritize biodiversity. And also there is lack of awareness also for the people who are working in that organization, who are operating that particular site or particular plant of the entity which is working in that biodiversity sensitive area. So due to that also, they are not able to provide proper data and biodiversity reporting becomes difficult. Challenges in linking to financial materiality. I already said that it is very difficult to say that, for example, they say that an entity is working in an area where biodiversity is getting impacted, and after 5 years there will be no food because of the loss of microorganisms near that area, or there will be 50% reduction in the produce. But again, it is very difficult, very challenging to give that financial numbers to that particular situation because that is just a forecasted figure. And also they do not know if we take corrective actions, how much is going to help them financially in terms of biodiversity loss. Then rapidly evolving disclosure frameworks and regulations. We have already seen that there are so many frameworks, there are so many regulations for reporting biodiversity. Companies are very confused which to adopt. And again, there are every time there is new updation, there is something new coming up. That also makes biodiversity reporting difficult. Now here, this is very important, that what kind of role we as professionals play in maintaining the biodiversity or in maintaining business operations for the entities who are working in biodiversity sensitive areas. So we can help businesses to make biodiversity strategy and policy. Of course, we do not have expertise in that. We need help of some external professionals also who have the technical knowledge. Then nature-related risk and opportunity analysis. We can help organizations to do this type of analysis. And here also, we will need help of the nature-related technical people, maybe scientists or engineers. Or we can take help of different reports which are prepared by different organizations, or maybe sometimes some universities also conduct surveys and they prepare report of that. So we can use them, we can take help of those reports, and we can help organizations to prepare their nature related risk opportunity analysis. Disclosure advisory. Of course, we can help here in BRSR also. A lot of CAs are helping companies to prepare their BRSR report or their sustainability report. So biodiversity is one disclosure under that report only. So we can give advisory to them. Here also collaboration with technical people can help. Biodiversity environment impact assessment. There is one more called social impact assessment. We must have heard. You all must have heard. So in CSR also, if a project which is more than of a year and the total spend was 10 CR and then on particular project was 1 CR, then and if it is related to environment, environment impact assessment is mandatory. Similarly, for some organizations, it is mandatory on them to do environment impact assessment from the environmental regulations point of view. So there also we can help, and definitely here also we will need help of the technical people. And for in terms of for doing the impact assessments for CSR and all those purposes, we need to have a certificate that is of impact assessors to become impact assessors. And for that, we have to pass an exam of that impact assessors. Then supply chain biodiversity risk mapping. We can not only help the entity to do their biodiversity risk mapping, but for their entire chain, supply chain. Supply chain is also very important to keep business ongoing. If we are not able to procure something, the organization's operations has to shut down. Similarly, if we are not able to sell the products, or the our consumers are getting impacted, then also the operations has to stop. So we have to maintain the entire, not only supply chain but the value chain. So that risk mapping also we can help. Assurance and review of biodiversity data and metrics. Just like we do assurance for BRSR report or sustainability report, we can do the assurance for the biodiversity data also. And again, we are not the technical people, so we need help of technical people for assuring this particular a particular disclosure. Green finance and biodiversity linked investment consulting. Lot of companies, lot of banks, lot of investors nowadays are very much interested into green financing and investing into biodiversity linked things. So there we can consult. Lot of financial institutions also ask for biodiversity reports or sustainability report or ESG report to see that what kind of environmental or other risks are there. So we being professionals can help, can consult there also. Design of KPI and restoration offset program. KPI is key performance indicators. So we can help the organizations what kind of restoration or offset programs you can have, what kind of KPIs are there. So professionals can play a role there. Training and capacity building for ESG teams. So in ESG, environment is there and then biodiversity is there. So we can help them, because in the previous slide also we have seen that there is lack of internal awareness, and lot of organizations nowadays has started their internal trainings for their employees and people who are working at the sites. So on those trainings, the people from different professions, from specifically from the sustainability background, they provide those trainings. So there also we professionals can play a role, specifically in terms of the financial related things, like financial impact of that risk. Of course, technical people can help us that this particular or this much risk can happen. And then again, how much financial impact will be there, that we CAs can help. Building biodiversity aligned business models. Lot of startups nowadays are coming which are trying to solve problems related to environment or related to protecting biodiversity. So we can consult them, we can help people to grow business models which are well aligned with ESG or biodiversity. And there are definitely a lot of schemes from the government and these investors who are willing to invest in businesses which are trying to solve the problems related to environment, related to biodiversity. So there also we can do consulting. We can become a change maker there. We can help in becoming, you know, in creating a change. So in short, that biodiversity is a material ESG factor. There are different frameworks: GRI, ESRS, CDP, BRSR. We can play definitely we can play an important role for bringing this transformation. And definitely there is huge potential about advisory, assurance, capacity building, and impact analysis, specifically for the financial impact analysis of these parameters of ESG. So now we can take up question and answers. I was a bit fast. I have concluded in 1 hour. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Uh,
Was I too fast?
no, ma'am, that's great, ma'am. A beautiful insight on the session on the topic biodiversity. Now I request Kinjal ma'am to take up the questions posted by members. Kinjal ma'am.
Yeah, one second. We have a few questions.
Sure.
First question is, what are the main biodiversity disclosure and are common in all the reporting framework?
Okay. So in this slide we had covered, what kind of disclosures are there. So it talks about basically the sites where a company is having operations, and if it is a biodiversity sensitive site, and then like what were the policies and procedures for measuring the impact, and for what kind of corrective actions the company is taking, those kind of disclosures. And then action and impact reporting: what are the targets and what are the financial implications. Basically those kind of disclosures we can do under biodiversity for sustainability.
The next question is, among GRI 101, ESRS E4, BRSR, and IFRS, which is the most practical framework for Indian companies starting out with biodiversity disclosure?
Sorry, I did not get your question.
Among GRI 101, ESRS E4, BRSR, and IFRS, which is the most practical framework for Indian companies starting out with biodiversity disclosure?
BRSR. BRSR is best one because it is specific to our Indian businesses, and it is very simple because it has given some sort of questions, and if it is applicable, then you have to disclose it, and if it is not applicable, simply you can say it is not applicable, and you can give an explanation why it is not applicable, and that's it. It is very simple. If a company is starting to report on ESG or sustainability, so I think BRSR framework is the best one to start with. It is very simple, easy, and and it is if well aligned with our SEBI also. It is it is given by SEBI. Yeah.
Next is, what is biodiversity risk assessment?
Okay. So biodiversity risk assessment is basically it is an assessment that what are the biodiversity related things or related if there is a loss of biodiversity in an area, what kind of impact it can have on the operations of the entity. So, that is, if it is a positive one, then it is a opportunity. If it is negative one, then it is a risk.
Okay. Are there any example of biodiversity risk integration into banking and financial services industry? And can you please share any case study?
Okay, so there are different banks which have separate funds nowadays, and they are also trying to analyze, or they do assessments for the entities which are there, in their lender portfolios, for biodiversity positivity or biodiversity related disclosures. There is this BN, BNB Paribas, BNP Paribas. That bank also do assessment for biodiversity. And there is a Dutch bank also, which uh, which says that uh, it has a fund. Basically, it has a fund which is for creating biodiversity positivity. So it is using that fund for the entities which are working in protecting biodiversity, or which are reversing the biodiversity related losses. So if a company prepares their ESG report or biodiversity report, and they go to the bank that we are trying to reverse the biodiversity impact, the bank will have a preference that they will give funds to them. And why these banks having these targets? Because there is already that target of achieving that reversal of biodiversity loss by 2030. So different companies have different countries have their own targets. So companies also have companies are also having their own targets to achieve the target of for that particular country, right? So these banks have made, that's why such kind of funds, that they will help the entities which are trying to help them in achieving this biodiversity positivity by 2030.
Okay. Next question is, how do biodiversity disclosures contribute to a company's overall sustainability strategy?
Okay, like I said, that biodiversity is very important if an organization is working in an area which is sensitive in terms of biodiversity. If something happens to that site, it can be in different terms. For example, how to put it, um, there is an area which is biodiversity sensitive, and a lot of regulations are there that company has to continuously analyze and report to that particular regulator about the biodiversity impact of their operations. And someday if the regulator comes and see that they are very highly impacting the biodiversity, and it is in a very negative manner, that now we have to shut down this particular plant or particular site of the organization. So if they shut down that, then definitely it will have a very big impact on the overall operations of the entity. If they have only that particular site, then the entire business will stop. But maybe that is only one plant that got shut down. But if that particular plant was providing something which was relevant for other plants also, means it was providing input to the other plants, so if that particular plant stops, the other plants will also stop. And also biodiversity in terms of, if we say companies which are working in the food sector, for example, some companies making bread, for them wheat is very important. And they say here, I'm taking example that not only their operations, but biodiversity for their value chain partners also going to impact their operations. So their value chain partners or their supply chain partners will be farmers. And if the produce is coming from the area which is biodiversity sensitive, and there is loss of biodiversity, due to that the overall production of wheat got reduced, for example. It can be any product. So it will impact the overall functioning of that organization, because it will now get lesser inputs, lesser resources, and it will impact the final output production of that entity. So that's how biodiversity impacts can impact the operations of the entity highly. And to maintain a sustainable long-term growth, they have to take care of biodiversity.
Okay. Next question is, how do biodiversity disclosures vary across industries, and are there sector specific considerations?
Okay. Sector specific considerations. Let's take example of energy sector, right? So in energy sector, mostly entities are getting energy from electricity which is coming from the non-renewable resources, for example coal. So if an entity is burning coal, and due to that the overall around surrounding area is getting polluted, the regulators decides that they want to stop it. And then again, it will impact not only that particular company, but it will impact the company which are getting electricity supply from that particular entity. And therefore a lot of companies have started shifting to renewable resources, electricity coming from renewable resources. Can you please repeat the question?
How do biodiversity disclosures vary across industries, and are there sector specific considerations?
Okay, yeah. So like in coal, I said that coal was particular thing. In mining also, if there are mining operations going on, due to that the biodiversity is getting impacted, and that will also have some kind of negative impact on the entity. So biodiversity reporting will be very different for different sectors, because biodiversity itself is a very complex thing. In some particular area, maybe the sensitive thing is water. In some particular area, maybe microorganisms are the sensitive thing. In some areas, maybe the plants or forest, those are sensitive. So it depends, it is very subjective.
One last question. Can biodiversity loss affect a company's financial performance or compliance?
Biodiversity loss definitely impacts the financial position of the entity. In my previous examples of also I said that if there is biodiversity loss, like if I take that bread making company's example, if farmers are not able to get proper wheat production, the company will not be able to get proper inputs, and therefore their operations will be impacted. And if they have to then do some sort of risk mitigation analysis, and they say that okay, this particular area, suppose there will be flood, and due to that there will be lesser productions, and then they say that what are the alternates where we can get that wheat from, or we can procure the wheat. And then they have to do again the cost benefit analysis, like maybe the other farmers are living very far away and there will be huge transportation cost, right? So like that can impact their financial position. Similarly, if a company which is working their main input is, for example, forest timber, and the forest due to urbanization, they are cutting down the forest. So then definitely that particular organization will not be able to procure proper raw material, proper timber, and it will impact their financial position. So there are, lot of examples where we can see that biodiversity can actually impact the financial position of the entity. And therefore, all these ESG disclosures. ESG is not just, it's not just a social service or environmental service. ESG is important because somehow the result is that all these factors, all these things in long run can impact the financial position of the entity, can impact the operations of the entity. So that is why all these disclosures are mandatory, and to make the businesses understand that this, okay, you take care of only your profits, we understand you are worried only about your margins, but why these things are important? Because somehow they are related or interlinked with your margins only.
Okay, thank you. We don't have further question. We'll go with a vote of thanks. So on behalf of our entire team, I extend a warm thank you to each one of you for joining us today for the webinar on biodiversity disclosure in sustainability reporting. Your active engagement and thoughtful questions have truly enriched today's session. A special expression of gratitude goes to our speaker, CA Moni Bajaj, for sharing profound insight into biodiversity disclosure in sustainability reporting. Your expertise has helped in promoting environmental and financial sustainability. We trust that today's webinar has equipped you with valuable insight to navigate this instrument and integrate sustainable finance principles into your organizational strategies. We invite you to stay connected with us. Our upcoming webinars are scheduled every Thursday from 4 to 6. Once again, thank you all for your active participation, and we look forward to your continuous engagement in our future endeavors. Wishing you all a productive day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.